Hey, good morning, everybody. This is Marcus here at Amada Senior Care. Sorry we're starting so late. We're having some issues with our GoToWebinar, but I'm glad that you guys hung in there. Thank you so much. It's great to have you on. See a lot of people. Actually, some people are still joining now. And do me a favor, guys. If we're coming out to you loud and clear, you can go into the question box. And if you're quick on the draw there, just go into the question box and let us know that you can hear us loud and clear. That'd be nice. Just want to make sure that that you're there, that you can hear us. And let's see here, make sure that we get, hey, there you go. Okay, now everybody's coming through. All right, Vic, Tim, Don, Marguerite, and Anand, thank you guys for doing that. I appreciate it. So today, it's really cool because about once a month or a couple times a month, we have our franchise partners join us for a webinar where you guys can ask any questions that you want about their business, how they're doing, what their experience has been like. And so today that's what we're doing, and we have Kevin Fehr on with us today. And Kevin, what was really interesting about Kevin is when we started talking to Kevin, and maybe I'll have him tell the story because I think his story of joining Amada is one of the coolest things I've ever heard. This is a guy who, when he makes a decision, you know, I heard somebody say one time that entrepreneurs, they make a decision and then they go make it right. And, you know, because there's a lot of different things that you could do with your life. There's a lot of different ways to make money, a lot of different ways to make an impact in your community or whatever it is that you want to do with your life. And sometimes it's about making that decision. And I really love how Kevin came on to Amada and what he had to do to be able to start the business. Now, before we get started, I know that some of you guys are new to Amada. You may not have heard of you know what we do, and this may be your very first call with us. So just real quick, before I bring Kevin on, I just want to let you guys know that as Amada Senior Care, we are a home care company, and our caregivers go to seniors' homes to take care of things like dressing, bathing, walking, meal preparation. It's really anything and everything that the family or the senior believes that they need to be able to thrive every day. And if home care is not ideal, then we can help the family find an assisted living, a boarding care, an Alzheimer's care unit, any of these communities that are cash pay. And in that situation, we act almost like a realtor, where we're able to help the family find the right place that's going to fit their financial needs, their health care needs, or socialization needs. So those are the two businesses, right? Either home care. If home care is not ideal, then we help them find the next best thing. We've been in business since 2007, and we've been franchising now for since 2012. And we now have about 97, 98 franchise territories throughout the country. And Kevin Fehr owns all of Nashville. Nashville is Kevin Fehr. So without further ado, I want to introduce you guys to Kevin. And Kevin, what I'd love for you to start with is how you heard about Amada and what it was like when you called and that whole process of getting started with us. Would you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Marcus. And so first off, good afternoon to everybody. I hope you're all having a great day today. So, you know, the investigative process of wanting to get into home care really basically just started online. You know, I was an executive at Merck. I was a senior level person. At the time I left, I was leading account management and account management strategies, but I've held jobs in leadership in sales, marketing, and sales training. Merck was downsizing, and I really just wanted to get out of the industry. I was just very frustrated with it because really not a lot of ability to make a strong impact. So I found Amada Senior Care through just researching basic principles on home care. I had a personal experience with my grandfather who, when he passed, he was 102, and my family made the conscious decision to get him out of his assisted living so he could go home to die in his home, which is where he ultimately he built that home back in the 1950s. So with that, I became a primary caregiver for him, and it really opened my eyes to what companies do, what caregivers do, and I thought, you know what, this is something where I could make an impact. So when I started researching, I found some of the good, the brand name companies like Visiting Angels, let's see, Home Instead. I think those were the two others that I narrowed down. And then I came across, I believe it was on LinkedIn, I came across a pretty solid campaign that the Amada AFI put together, and I just picked up the phone and called him. I reached out and I talked with Tim, and then I wound up talking with Marcus, and we made the decision that, and Amada made the decision that we could come out to what's called a discovery day. And then that's kind of where, the franchise, the AFI gets to see you, see who you are as a person. You get to evaluate them, and it's kind of like a fun, informal type of interview, really, basically. And we were awarded a franchise. And the geography that I lived in, I was in Virginia at the time, and Amada just sold a territory in the place where my wife and I lived. And my next logical response was, where's a place that you guys need some help? Where's some good opportunity? And Nashville came up, and I said, let's do it. And so my wife and I sold our home in Virginia. We picked up and moved to Nashville. And in fact, I got off the plane from Discovery Day, met with a realtor the next day, and bought a house in the Nashville area to start this process.
It was amazing. I mean, I remember when we were talking, I was so depressed. I was like, man, I cannot believe we're not going to be able to work with Kevin, because Richmond was already awarded. I remember when you called Tim back, and Tim talked to me and said, man, you're not going to believe, but Kevin's interested in Nashville. We were so excited. Hey, when you talk about that initial step and then getting into the business, starting the business there, tell us a little bit on the very beginning. So what a lot of folks on the phone, I think you focus on, what's that first even like 3 months going to be like? And when you're trying to make this decision, a lot of times you're not thinking, 5 years down the road what the business is going to be like. It's what the heck happens after I sign the franchise agreement, pay the franchise fee, and now I've got to go start a business. You share a little bit about those very, very initial stages.
Yeah, it's a lot of adjectives, right? It's scary. It's extreme. Yeah, it's extremely exciting. There's a really good sense of adrenaline. It's not like you come on to AFI, you come on with Amada, and you're just thrown into the ocean, right? We go through a rigorous week-long training, if you will, right? So, my wife and I went out to that. We did that. We got back home, and, if anybody has been involved in corporate training, right, data says that you retain only about 10% of what you get. But you have the resources to say, hey, I heard about this in training, here's where I can go, here's what I can reference, here's who I can call, etc. So we got back into our little office, and you want to talk about humble beginnings. I mean, it was just a little office with me and a computer and a printer and a phone, and I was like, okay, we're in business. And, the process starts by you being a student of your profession. So I canvassed the Nashville market, and I learned everything that I could about the senior care industry, who were the players, who were the people to stay away from, right? I did a lot of that reconnaissance work. And then, I just went out and hit the pavement, man. I just started, you get a lot of doors closed in your face. Anybody who comes from a sales background, you should embrace that. That's wonderful. But then eventually, I think for that first 3 months, we just had a sole focus on establishing a brand, okay? We've committed a lot of monies to doing that, and probably the best business decision that we made, because we did hit the ground running very quickly, and we haven't looked back 2.5 years later.
That's awesome. And by the way, tell me, I know that I think you and Kelly have the ability to sort of work together. You've worked together in the past before, but for some of the folks that are on the line, it might be a single operator, it might be them and a spouse, or them and a partner. can you share a little bit about when you started and you talked about you in that little office? How much was Kelly involved in it, and how has that evolved over time? I know this is like a 5-part question, so what was that like? And then what would you suggest to that person who is a single operator to be able to make sure that they're able to take the brunt of the business? Because there's a lot to do. So I know it's a 5-part question, but talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'll take my best shot. So first of all, we have several examples of very, very successful franchise owners who are single operators. Okay, so there is no, you are not competitively disadvantaged. If you are a single operator, you have to there's only 24 hours in a day. Most people have lives outside of work, so you need to develop that work-life balance. When Kelly and I started Amada, we kind of had a divide and conquer approach. Okay, so I was going to lead our long-term sales planning, our business modeling, our business planning, and be involved in sales and marketing, or i.e. establishing that brand. That's 50% of what you need to do. The other 50% is operational in nature. Okay, so my wife took on that role. My wife owns her own company, and she has a very good understanding of how to establish and develop operations. So I kind of stayed out of that space. She kind of stayed out of the sales and marketing space. And then what we did as we started to grow, we started to cross-train or cross-pollinate. So I could get into our software and make a schedule for a client or a caregiver. Kelly would be able to do a sales intake call, right? So we kind of trained off of each other. And then, it doesn't take long, in this industry, and I don't know what our census is now. We're probably managing 80-some clients. At one point, I think we were close to 100. But when you hit like 10 clients, your dynamics change. And then from a capacity standpoint, you have to make a decision of, who's that first person that you're going to hire, right? Somebody that you are going to bring into your leadership team, somebody who's going to be working full-time in your office. They typically start out in the role of a scheduler, okay? And that's exactly what we did. We hired somebody who is a very good scheduler, and we started that process. From there, we expanded into hiring somebody to be a full-time recruiter. We're not recruiting clients, but recruiting caregivers, right, to build our infrastructure. Then we branched out, and I brought in a community relations person, right, somebody that goes out and kind of does what I do, but we define that role a little differently. And from there you just build. So I think right now Amada Nashville has 6 full-time employees. We're moving into our 3rd office because we've outgrown, which is a great problem to have. But that's kind of how it starts, right? So in summary, 50% sales and marketing, 50% operations. If you skimp on one, it's going to hurt you somewhere. So you have to really pay due diligence in how you carve out your time.
Perfect. Well, guys, this really is a call to be able to answer your questions. So I should have actually prompted you earlier, but let me tell you this. So there's 2 ways to do this. Our favorite way for you to ask questions is for you to raise your hand. When you raise your hand, then I am able to unmute you, and you can ask a question live. We'd love to get your questions live. What's great about that is I unmute you. You can talk to Kevin, ask your question. You can have a follow-up. Most likely the question you have is most likely the same question that other folks on the line will have as well. So that's one way to ask. So all you have to do is raise your hand, and I can unmute you. Now, some of you may have a lot of noise on your side. So what you can do is you can just ask a question on the question box of the GoToWebinar panel. Type in your question there. I can see it. I know between Kevin and I, nothing's taboo. You can ask anything you want, and I'll ask Kevin the question. And actually, Anand, you were asking here that you may have missed, but so Kevin, can you talk about when you started the business, the date?
Yeah, we launched March 24th, 2015. First client was brought on April 1st, 2015.
And I don't recall, but did you have licensing in Nashville?
Yes, and I actually did my licensing prior to me coming out to my training. So I had license in
Yeah.
hand. I had license in hand going into training. So that allowed me to start my marketing as soon as I got back in territory.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so let me see here. That's actually a good question, Vic. What are the roles and responsibilities of those 6 full-time employees that you have now?
Yes, great question, Dick. So I consider myself, to be one of those. So I head up sales and marketing. My wife is our director of operations. Okay, so she has oversight over billing, payroll. She manages our schedulers. She manages our recruiters. Um, Both her and I will collaborate and deal with HR issues. As the president, I will handle any legal issues or any lawyer type of things. Okay, so that's Kelly and I from a leadership role, and then Bob Schricker is our director of community relations. So Bob is out cultivating relationships with what we call in the industry traditional referral sources. Okay, stuff like skilled rehabs or nursing homes, assisted living communities, adult retirement centers, senior centers, stuff like that. So he is a marketer. I provide him with a car that's wrapped with Amada and our phone number, and he goes out and promotes and advocates for seniors. Then we have, so that's 3. Then we have 2 women that serve as dedicated schedulers. Okay, so imagine the complexities, right? 85 clients, 130 caregivers. Caregivers call out. Scheduling is like putting together a jigsaw puzzle, and sometimes if a piece falls on the floor, it can create a lot of stress. So we really have to have 2 dedicated people that can manage our clients, because this job is all about customer relations, right, and customer service. So we can't drop balls there. So we invest in those people. And then I have one woman who is head of what we call our head of caregiver services, okay? And my head of caregiver services is responsible for hiring, recruiting, hiring, onboarding new caregivers, right? Grading and evaluating our current caregivers, all right? And then we have a training center that we built in our office here in Nashville, and Stacy is required to bring our caregivers in and provide them with ongoing training. Things like how to transfer a client from a bed to a wheelchair, how to give a proper sponge bath, right? How to use a Hoyer lift for somebody who is non-ambulatory, things along those lines. So that's how we build up, that's how I utilize the 6 full-time people that I have in our office.
Hey, quick question for you. So tell me, 2 schedulers for about 80 clients. When do you feel like you'll have to add that 3rd scheduler?
I think, again, from our perspective, I look at it like a 40-to-1 ratio, clients to scheduler.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think we're good for for now. But here's the deal: we've had some office turnover, like everybody has, right? And predominantly, it's not because we didn't value employees. It's not because we didn't provide them good pay and great benefits and all that good stuff. It's because people get burned out in that role, right? So we are very conscious to kick our schedulers out. When it's time to leave, we kick them out. Get out of here. Go home, be with your family, right? Because at the end of the day, people can get burned out. And when you get valuable employees, I would rather, pay more to them, right? Maybe reduce some of their responsibility so they stay fresh and you don't have turnover. Because as a business owner, turning over employees is expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, and good follow-up to that. Actually, Anand just mentioned that the audio was a little shaky or no audio. Guys, just let me know. Those of you who are asking questions, if we're still coming out to you loud and clear, let us know. Anand, love to hear if you can still hear us, if we're back. Let's see.
Hello, Anand.
Let's see. So it shows that the audio is okay, loud and clear. Suzanne, loud and clear. Okay, good. All right, so we're there. And actually, Vic said, let me make sure. Hang on. So you have about 135 caregivers to service 85 clients. So you talk about that ratio. Why that ratio of roughly that many caregivers to that many clients?
Well, that's a great question, and I will tell you that we are under capacity right now. So,
yeah.
You know, in our industry, if I could make my own druthers, it would be great to have a 2-to-1 ratio of caregivers to clients. Okay, I will be very upfront with you. I'll be very honest with you. I could have 150 clients right now. Okay, but we're not going to be pushing sales. We're not going to be marketing, with a lot of rigor if we don't have the infrastructure to support that. Because the second that you drop the ball by not being able to provide quality care, by having compromised caregivers, you are now diluted into a commodities market. Amada Senior Care is never in the commodities market. We are above them. We are elite. So I will actually, if I get calls and we have a weekly staff meeting and my schedulers bring me up to speed on availability, if I get a call and I can't field it, I'm going to refer it to another home care agency in my market, one that I've developed a good relationship with, one that I can trust, because I'm not going to wreck my brand. So right now, our ratio is low. And in the industry, the crisis that is going on right now is caregivers, right? I mean, the demand is exceeding the supply, okay? So we have to not compromise our standards. We have a very high standard who we bring in, but we have, an issue. So the last couple months, our business has been steady, which is great. But Bob and I weren't really out marketing a lot because we just got to take care of our internal house before we can, take on more responsibilities.
Right. Yeah. And it's super important, guys. I think I would say, so Kevin, talk about, so what are the things that you start to do as you have this shortage, right? And you have to start to get more and more creative to find the best caregivers. I assume obviously you can put an ad out there and you get tons of resumes, but the quality is difficult. So how do you guys address that shortage?
Yep. So somewhat unique to Amada Nashville. And by the way, when I say this, guys, we talk as owners in the Amada family. We're talking to each other all the time, right? And so, we try to share best practices. We had the idea of partnering with a durable medical equipment, a DME company, and we bought a hospital bed, we bought Hoyer lifts, wheelchairs, walkers, gait belts, all that, and we built an on-site training center in our location. The strategic reason why we did that, we started to tap into places to get good people, and when I say good people, kind-hearted people, right? Where we could go out and market and say no experience needed, Amada will train you. In fact, we pay our caregivers to come in and get trained, right? Which it's a great retention tool. They love that. And so we started marketing at like churches, okay? Women's groups, small groups. We targeted women who were a little older in age, who they might have like empty nest syndrome, right? Their kids are grown, husband still might be working, wife's at home, and she's kind of bored, wants to get out and give back to the community. Well, what a better way to do it than be a caregiver with Amada, and we'll come in and we'll train you. So I think a couple folks across the country have tapped into that, but that's one of the best successes that we've had in Nashville to get some good people. That's
great. Now I think JD, you have your hand up, and actually it looks like you've had it for a little while. I'm going to try to unmute you. If it was an accident, it's okay. You can still ask a question. So let's see here. JD, can you hear us?
I am. It was an accident. Sorry about that.
No, it's all right, but do you have a question anyway?
Well, I do, actually. So what do you find the return? And I know we go over some of the logistics for financing and what the return on investment is. So could you touch on that a little bit as far as moving from a job where you're guaranteed salary with commission, stuff like that, fairly lucrative career, into this type of franchise on your own, and what you found the necessary needs were on that.
Sure. No, great question. And look, guys, there's a reality here, okay? When somebody says, hey, how great is it to own a home care company? I bet you can make a lot of money. And I say, yeah, you have the potential to. Here's my guiding principle that I've coached a lot of newer franchisees that have come on, and actually people who chose not to go into this profession. I simply say that if your goal in this is to become a millionaire in 6 months, don't invest in Amada and don't go into this industry. If your goal, however, is to have a true dedication and passion to helping seniors, helping veterans, giving back to your community, if that's your goal, then I think you stand a really good chance of being successful in this industry. So if you look at the top 10, top 15 revenue producers at Amada, which I think I'm a part of, I think everybody has the core of they want to help people. Okay, that's it. Now, to your point though, you still have to feed your family. I took an extreme risk, right? And you need to have what is called risk tolerance if you want to be an entrepreneur. Okay, I walked away from a job where I made a lot of money and I had a lot of benefits. I think it was the best decision that I ever made. And financially, we're doing well. It's really hard to, dollarize it or put a number on it. I will tell you this: if you can build a good business, right, foundationally grounded in principle, you should be able to make 20% profit. We're making more than that, right? So we're very lean in where we spend money, and as a result, we have a higher profit margin per month. So I think, also you're investing in a franchise that's going to grow, and it's also going to become more valuable as people get older and the need is going to continue to be there. The better you can establish your brand. Amada Nashville is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. We're A+ rated by the Home Care Standards Bureau. When you can get third-party groups that support your excellence, it just elevates your value. And eventually, we're going to sell our franchises. And when we do, I consider that's my retirement right there. So I put my retirement into building this company, and failure is not an option. And that's how an entrepreneur has to think.
That's a great answer. Hey, I've got a great question here from Dow and Renee.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Yeah. Hang on, let me see if I can unmute you guys. Dow, Renee, are you there?
Yep, we're here.
Hey, how are you guys?
Hey guys, how are you?
Good.
Good. Well, I threw out a question. I threw out a question for Kevin about what do you wish you had known, when you started, that you had to learn after you began, that if you had known it, it would have set you up even better for success.
Wow, that's a
good one.
You must come from a Merck background.
I must.
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I think that this theme is pretty ubiquitous across all franchise owners. We didn't know how tough it would be to hire, maintain, and recruit, hire, and maintain quality caregivers. Yes, you can do your due diligence and look and say how many home care companies are there in the area, how many, what's their caseload like, how many employees do they have. You can do all of that, but if you want to be at Amada, you want to be the elite, right? And so we pass on probably 70% of people that apply to our company, okay? And it hurts me to do that because I need numbers. But the second we compromise our quality, we diminish our excellence. So if I would have known the headspace and rigor that it would take to maintain good people, I would have approached it a little differently in the beginning. Now we're learning, right? And that's part of the evolution of, of growing a business. But man, if I would have known that right from the get-go, I would have offered things like, AAA discounts up front, getting Aflac supplemental insurance that, the caregivers can buy into at a great group rate, things that would entice them or want them to say, hey, I want to stay at Amada. Since we've done stuff like that, we're probably managing to about a 70% retention rate, and the industry is probably less than 50. So we're doing something right, but ways to go.
Okay, great, thank you.
Hey, great question, guys. Okay, now I've got, let's see here, and let me go back to the question panel here. Yeah, so that's actually a good question, Vic, talking about the economics of the caregiver. So his question is recruiting caregivers limited by availability or economics? Meaning, what are you willing to pay and what the caregivers want? And maybe a follow-up to that is, what do you think caregivers value the most? Is it, that you pay $1 or $2, whatever, above the competition? Is it the respect? Is it the benefits you're talking about? What is that combination that allows you to have a better retention?
Yeah, great question. So I think if I look at our employees, I would say the number one thing they value. Keep in mind, these are not high salaried employees. Okay, these are employees that work for on average, $10 an hour. Okay, and it's really hard to make a living doing that. We have employed some of our best caregivers. They work for multiple companies, right? Even though we give them 40-hour shifts, they're working because they could work at another company and pick up weekends and work 60 hours, right? What you pay them is very important, and this is always going to be market specific. But I will tell you that a caregiver, there is a ceiling that you just can't overpay. If you overpay, in your business model, you can't make money, okay? Because you have to, supply stuff like insurance, and you have to be licensed and bonded and carry liability, and all of those things. So, I think that the frustration with caregivers comes, we'll hire somebody great, and they'll say, well, I need 40 hours right away. And if we can deliver on that, that's great. But the client might be a hospice client, and they might die in a week. And now the caregiver looks at it like, oh, I'm out of a job. We do our best to reroute them, right? But at the end of the day, this industry, you can't guarantee somebody 40 hours unless they're an office staff, right? Which we've promoted people from within our agency to do that. So I think that's the biggest challenge, right? It's just, hey, it's a finite amount of money that you can pay these folks. And then the thing I think that they appreciate is a combination of good pay, right? And it's also a combination of recognition, okay? I found that in my professional career, employees want to be valued, okay, regardless of what capacity they're in. So we do a ton of things to just show support, show appreciation, and I think what the data says, and I can back this up with our company, the caregivers like that.
That's great. Now, a lot of people started to ask about how do you pay the caregivers? Are they W-2? Are they 1099? And can you cover that as far as what they are? And then maybe mention, I don't know, in your territory, if that is a concern where there's a lot of companies that are 1099, and if you've had to educate referral sources and clients about the difference between the two. Yes, yeah,
whoever asked that's a great question. All of our employees are W-2'd employees, okay? Translation, and the way I'll ask you guys to think about this, it's a cost versus value perspective, okay? A 1099 employee, they're out there, and there are agencies that do contract caregivers, and they will be able to offer a family a lower rate, okay? Subsequently, they're paying their caregivers less because they're not paying the caregivers local taxes, right? So when you look at a W-2'd employee at Amada, I'm paying all their state and local taxes. I'm paying their workman's comp insurance should they get hurt on the job. I am paying to have general liability insurance in case there's accusations of a theft or something like that. So while I am paying them, let's say we'll use whole numbers, $10 an hour, that's more like $13 an hour, right? The cost that I have to absorb to employ a W-2 employee. A 1099, they have to pay all those taxes, right? In theory, they would have to get their own insurance. Very few do, but that would be at a cost to them. So when you look at the cost value curve, it's actually for our clients, it's more cost effective for them to go with an agency that has W-2 employees and pay a little more upfront, not only for the peace of mind, but just for everything that you get by a licensed and bonded company standing by you. Does that answer the question, the cost value concept?
Yeah, I think it does. And guys, obviously, any follow-ups to that? It's a very interesting part of our business, right? Is that differentiation between 1099 and W-2. So any follow-ups to that, guys? Make sure that you type it in. And several of you asked about that. Okay, Dina. Hey, Dina. She wanted to know about working capital needed. If you could share a little bit more about, and let me see if I can get the whole question here. Talk about working capital needed in those early months post signing the franchise agreement.
Yeah. So I don't know how much the franchises cost now. When I bought it, it was like $50. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know how much it was. I literally, but yeah, so that's an upfront cost. I would say after you make that initial investment, right, after you go through your training and you're sitting in your little office with your computer, I would say having about $150,000 in a business checking account is probably a pretty good number to start with. I'm trying to think back honestly, guys. I think that's about where we were, okay? And I say that for a couple of reasons, right? You are gonna have to spend a lot of money up front on marketing, on advertising, marketing. You need cash to be able to do that. And there's nothing more scary. Remember at the beginning I said scary was an adjective used to describe it. There's nothing more scary than watching your bank account plummet and you don't even have clients yet, right? But that's what an entrepreneur does, right? They believe in themselves, they believe in their model, and they believe they can execute. Then when you start getting clients, you got to hire people, right? So you have to be able to cover your payroll, all right? And you know, all of us at one point or another have had horror stories like, oh my gosh, are we going to be able to make payroll this month? You know, Tafa and Chad used to talk about that all the time in their humble beginnings when they started. And, you know, I think it's healthy to have a good, you know, nest egg in your account. So when you do have to hire 20 people because you got, you know, 10 new clients, you can do it without stressing, right? If you want to make an investment in a marketing campaign in your local geography that's going to cost $10,000, you can do that. Right, and you can get your brand out there at a much quicker rate than if you didn't do that. So in short, I would say, you know, probably about 150 seems pretty good. Could you do 100? Of course you could, right? You could do less than that, but I'm saying to have comfort as you grow, that's probably because you really want to avoid the concept of like small business loans, you know, so you really want to be able to fund your business.
All right, that's a great answer. Hey, tell me, related to that, we talk a lot about a differentiation strategy, right? The long-term care insurance, VA, and the things that we do in advocating for the senior. So talk to us about, was that valuable to you, or did you end up getting to your territory and it's just business as usual? Everyone's doing the same thing. Did the differentiation strategy that we promote and talk about, did that help you launch the business?
Yeah, no doubt. It helped me lay a framework. It helped me lay a framework so I could have a competitive conversation when the situation was right. So you've heard me mention the industry that we're in. I believe it is called, it's a commodities market. Commodities defined as we all do the same stuff. We have the same people. We hire the same caregivers. You know, and in Nashville, you got over 100 agencies to pick from, right? How Amada taught me to think about my business model, when I talk to people, I say we have two competitive differentiators, right? One is our robust technology platform, okay? So we use a proprietary software. We set up family portals that families can check in on, you know, who the caregiver is taking care of mom, and they can live in California, right? who worked there, what did they do. They have access to that 24 hours a day. We also have a home monitoring service that uses predictive analytics, and it's called Be Close with Amada. That technology other companies don't have, right? So I leverage that, and I think that's really important. And then the other piece that we leverage, Marcus, you hit on this, it's financial care coordination. We will come up with ways for families to find ways to pay for home care. All right, you might say, what are you talking about? Well, 15 to 20% of people over 65 own what's called a long-term care insurance policy. And we built Amada Nashville very early by being a subject matter expert in this field. A lot of other home care companies are, but they don't go to the level that Amada does. So Amada will actually take ownership of that policyholder's policy, and we'll work directly with the insurance company to get paid. Translation, we will assume all the risk, and a family does not have to worry about getting a claim denied. We turned on 100% of every claim that we've touched. The industry average is 50% of initial claims get rejected. So I think that when we talk about that, we talk about VA, veterans benefits, a lot of other home care companies do that. But when you get into knowing your business and you become friends with agents that sell long-term care insurance, you're also going to get turned on to financial advisors. Financial advisors are folks that say, if you have a life insurance policy, do you know that you can convert some of your death benefit into cash needed now to pay for in-home care? And they can put a rider in your policy that will allow families to do that. Other agencies that I compete with, they don't have the headspace for this. And I think that it probably goes down to they're just calling on the traditional referral sources. At Amada, we dive into this stuff, and that's how we've elevated our brand. You know, and I'm just speaking in the national market, but I know this is across the country. That's how we've elevated our brand, that people go to us because of those differentiators.
That's perfect. Okay, so the follow-up to that, Suzanne is asking, well, but do you charge for this financial care coordination? Does the family have to pay extra to be able to get that benefit?
Yes and no, right? So all of our consultations are complimentary up front, right? And I've worked with many families that I've went through their policy. I've called on behalf of them to the insurance. We've done a lot of legwork, and they chose for one reason or another not to go with our agency. I mean, that does happen, and no, I don't quote bill for that, right? When a family comes on board with us, right, I work with the family and I say to them very, very openly and honestly, which is the only way to run a business. The more transparent you are with people, the more they appreciate it. And when it gets down to finances, that's very high on people's radars. So what I tell them in their insurance, as we're opening their claim, translation, I'm using my working capital. I'm using my employees. I'm using time out of their day to start the policy. We're doing all of this stuff. I'm paying a nurse to come out and do assessments. I say to the family, hey, during your deductible phase, I'm going to charge you at the low end of our pay scale so you can minimize how much money you're spending out of pocket. But then understand, when we turn on your policy, we are then going to charge the insurance company at a higher rate or at the higher end of the pay scale to offset the costs that I've had to incur and the cost savings that I provided you. Now your policy is going to pay on that. And when you explain it like that, people have no problems. And then we do get some good compensation for that. So an example would be, hey, you got to pay $20 an hour for our services, but when the policy goes on, we're billing at 26. And people are like, okay. All right, so those are Nashville numbers. Those aren't national numbers or anything else. But so you can see over time, we're going to make some good money off that consultative service.
Right. That's you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly right. Vic had a follow-up about, wait a minute, if you're offering insurance and these caregivers are working for a bunch of other companies as well, how do you coordinate the healthcare insurance for a caregiver working across multiple employers? And I thought, Vic, if you have that question, maybe some other folks have that question as well. So if you could quickly just address, how when you talk about, offering insurance or benefits and things like that, how does that coordinate with somebody who's W-2, part-time, and also working for other employers?
Yeah, that's a great question, and what it gets down to is their full-time equivalency. So they have to be a full-time equivalent. We don't offer insurance for people that are working 8 hours a week, 12 hours a week, right? They got to be working 40-hour weeks. Actually, I think by definition it's 36 and a half hours. So, you know, they could be full-time at another place and getting benefits from them, and they come here and they understand that because we spell that out for them, right? If we have an individual that was part-time and they're bumped up to full-time, right, because their availability changes, or, you know, they've done a great job and they want to increase, you know, whatever it is, you know, once they're working full-time for, I believe it's 30 days, then we open that up and offer it to them. Great question.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, guys, we are coming to about an hour into the call, and I don't want to keep you guys for too long, so thank you. So I think I got to almost all of your questions, and I really appreciate you guys asking. It was a phenomenal amount of questions here. Thank you so much for being so involved and curious. It really means a lot to us. So, Kevin, I wanted to ask you, I guess a final question is, now that all these years you've been in the business now, would you still have made the same decision? That's question number one. And tell us, you know, what does the future look like? You know, as you and Kelly and the kids look at your future, and we're talking, you know, the next 3, 4, 5 years. What does that look like to you? And maybe that can be the last part of our call.
Yeah. Would I have changed anything? Absolutely not. This is, I believe folks that go into this industry, I believe it's kind of like a calling. I mean, that's how I can just summarize how I feel about it. I mean, I love what I do every day. I'm a certified senior advisor, and I think I'm pretty well educated on helping families make good informed decisions. I love that, right? The finances, everything, it takes care of themselves, right? We're living a very good lifestyle. We also work really hard. I love that. The next 3 to 5 years, man, it's all about excellence, right? And so I envision us probably buying some more territories, okay? An expansion model, if you will. But regardless of if we expand into other states, which we're toying or thinking about some opportunities, right? Regardless of if we do that, the future is we're going to be the #1 rated home care company. That's our vision at Amada Nashville, is to be the #1 rated home care company in Tennessee. And I think we're pretty darn close if we're not, okay? So it's all about excellence. It's all about hiring great people. I can't think of a better experience than going home at night and sitting back and having a beverage and saying, you know, I helped to put food on the table for over 100 families. You know, that's a pretty cool thing. And oh, by the way, we're taking care of a ton of families, and these people really value and appreciate what we do. So that's how I summarize my experience. Yeah, I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't change it for the world, man. Love it.
All right. Hey, Kevin, we really appreciate you. Thank you so much for doing this call. And we always talk about our franchise partners, and I would tell you guys that at this point, the biggest value of Amada, and you hear that from all of our franchisees, it's really not, you know, Chad and Tafa. You know, they're here to coach you guys and they're here to help you. But, you know, our annual conference is coming up here in February, and, you know, 90% of that annual conference is folks like Kevin and folks like Robert and Ken and all these franchisees that we have. They are the ones sharing that message with our franchise partners. They're educating and talking about their business, because you can take this model and make it your own. And it's something that we didn't expect. We didn't realize that this would happen. But it's folks like Kevin that we pinch ourselves all the time that this group of people, this family has come together. And I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's the weirdest thing. Like we are just so thankful for the community of franchisees that we have, and we're so incredibly thankful. So Kevin, thank you. I really appreciate you being on the phone with us.
Yeah, and Marcus, listen, if you want to give out my contact information or whatever, I mean, I bend over backwards to talk to folks because, you know, here's the deal. I want my brand to be an amazing brand, and the more amazing people that we have leading the effort. So I really, if anybody that's on this call wants to talk one-off and maybe talk more details, whatever, I'm certainly available to do that.
Hey, thanks. So, guys, please reach out to Tim Valencia, and you'll be able to get the contact information for Kevin. And for all of you on the line, thank you so much for spending the time with us. In fact, everyone who signed on is still on the line with us. That means so much. Thank you, guys. Please have a great week, and make sure you reach out to Tim Valencia to schedule your next steps of discovery, and we'll talk to everybody soon. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, guys.
All right, bye-bye.